Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And we're happy to be here, especially after Monday's podcast where I revealed all about what had been going on lately and got a couple nice emails out of that. So thank you to those who sent in your emails. We appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. Jody Lynn, you were in on what was going on in the background. And I have to tell you, it's like any time that I don't want to call it a confession. It's more like a revealment, just letting stuff out like that. You asked me before we got going how did it feel, and I think the way it felt was relief. Like, oh, okay, good. Like everybody's in on the secret now. It's not a secret anymore. It's out in the open.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it feels better is what I'm trying to say.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. That's the most important thing.
It is. And the feedback I got was that I did a good job doing it all. So, I mean, how can you go wrong with feedback like that? I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like I'm on the other side now in many ways. I still have a couple issues that aren't resolved. I actually got a little piece of good news yesterday that may actually help to resolve some of my financial issues. Don't know yet for sure, but I should know in a few days whether or not that's going to work out well. So if it does, then I'm one step closer to being in that full state that I've been wanting to be in for about 3 months now.
Yeah. Wow. Has it been 3 months?
Almost.
Already?
Yeah. It's about it'll be 3 months on January 7th. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Time just flies.
Except when you're in the middle of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Then it drags.
Then it drags. Yeah. Like, oh, geez, one day after another. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I commend you for your courage, because it does take courage to talk about things that are so close to the heart and, so vulnerable. But that's what we need in this world is more honesty and vulnerability. There's more people in the world that are going through similar things to you, and your journey will inspire them to take action and inspire them to just keep going and just uplift them. So thank you for coming out and talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, if that were the result, that would be a great result. I would love that. I have to admit the reason it took me this long to even tell this story was because it was so close to home. It was so much a part of my day to day that I had a hard time just even talking about it. I mean, I could talk about it with close friends. I talked about it with you and others. Yeah. But talking about it in public was, I couldn't go there. It was just too much.
Yeah.
But then the holiday comes and, Monday I do the show with Anne-Marie and Louis. Louis and his family are in Austria. So it was just me and Anne-Marie, and I didn't have a guest. I said, you know what? Anne-Marie was one of the people who was helping me. That kind of feels like the time to do it.
Yeah.
So I followed through on that. And I think enough time had passed and enough progress had been made, because there's so many things that I was facing, immediately after that event, that my life literally just, I put it this way. I participated in a meetup meeting last night with somebody else who runs a law of attraction meetup. And at one point in her presentation, she talked about how when we are asking for a lot of stuff to happen in our lives, and a lot of stuff does happen in our lives, everything feels shaken up. And that's exactly the way it's felt. Everything literally everything of importance in my life has shaken up. And it's not a comfortable feeling. It's a rather traumatic feeling in some ways. So yeah, I kind of needed time to get used to that. And I wanted to see what was going to fall into place, because as I mentioned on Monday, it kind of reminds me of 2014 when Louise and I moved from Virginia back to Connecticut, and we had all these things that were issues at the time, and they all kind of fell into place. I said, that's kind of what the feeling is here. And yeah, that is what's happening. It all hasn't fallen into place yet. I mean, all those spinning plates, some of those spinning plates that come down to the ground, others are still spinning, but they're spinning into place. And I think they're all going to fall into place.
Of course they will.
Which is really interesting.
Yeah.
When there's so much chaos like that, you figure something's got to break.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. That feels like the natural order of things is more chaos.
Yes. This is true.
Oh.
This is true. Well, I thought we could talk about, I titled the episode Holiday Colors because during the holiday season, people have different colors that they experience. Some people experienced a white Christmas. Other people may have experienced a blue Christmas, to quote Elvis Presley.
Mm-hmm.
They had children. It was probably a primary and secondary color Christmas. For some people, it's pastels and sparkly lights and so forth. For others, it's just kind of dim and relatively dark. And that's why I figured colors are kind of a nice metaphor for, and some people don't, I should also mention, some people don't celebrate Christmas at all. Some people are Jewish, they celebrate Hanukkah. Some people have no particular, holiday type association at all, although that's a fairly small minority. And there are others too, different categories. Kwanzaa, that's another one. But, for the most part, anybody who's experiencing and in one degree or another celebrating the holiday season, the colors of their season are directly impacted by how they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we talk about all the time here is, what do you feel about something? How do you feel about what it is you're trying to attract, or what it is that's going on in your life, or how, the person that you're dealing with is interacting with you or treating you, or what's going on with your career, or how your health is doing, or, there's like this long list of things that go on in our lives that we have feelings and associations. So I figured talk about those feelings, because this is a time when those feelings become accentuated.
Yeah. And hit you in the face.
Yeah. True, that can happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't even mention the relatives that come over, when the relatives coming to visit, it's kind of like Thanksgiving, reinvented, because now all of a sudden like Uncle Jasper came over and was fighting you over politics. And guess what? He's back.
Yeah.
A month later.
Right.
So
first Thanksgiving, now Christmas.
Yep. So it's just one thing after another, it seems at times. So, but once again, it comes down to what are we feeling? And more importantly, what are we choosing about what we're feeling?
Mm-hmm.
Because those choices make all the difference in the world, although they don't always seem that way.
Yeah. It doesn't always feel like we're choosing.
No. Sometimes it feels like we're having it chosen for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, man. All of these ideas we have in our head, hey?
Mm-hmm. We have a bunch of them. It's true.
Yeah.
I mentioned that meetup group I was part of last night, and the leader of it, she did a presentation for about an hour. It was a rather lengthy presentation, and then she took questions and comments and so forth from people who were in the audience. There were probably 40, 50 people there, so it was a pretty good sized group. And one theme that kept coming through, which is not surprising at all when you have a group talking about this topic, but one theme that kept coming through over and over again is, I'm dealing with stuff in my life and I keep wondering, what am I doing wrong? It's a very common response. I mean, people will phrase it differently, perhaps, they'll express differently, think about it differently and so forth. But basically it comes down to, what am I doing wrong? Why am I not getting the result I'm looking for? I'm trying to attract X. Why isn't X happening? I keep getting Y instead of X. What's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the conversation was about, well, how do you get X rather than Y? Why are you getting Y in the first place? What do you do about the Y that you're getting that you really didn't want to get?
Is it something you're supposed to learn?
Could be. Could very well be. Yeah.
Something you're supposed to experience?
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Boy, that'll piss you off.
Yeah. And I think that it's so interesting, the phrase and the words within the phrase, like, what am I doing wrong? Because we're taught in, so many personal development courses, you got to take personal responsibility for what is happening in your life.
Right.
And what I found is we use that as a stick to beat ourselves with,
Sure.
I'm the common denominator in my life. It must be something that I'm doing wrong. And in the definitions of the words, when we look at the word wrong, it typically equates to like something immoral and very, very bad.
Right. Exactly.
And that's the standard or the stick that we're beating ourselves with is I must be immoral or bad in some way. That's the meaning or context that isn't being said behind that sentence.
And that's where I try to remind myself of the Abraham Hicks phrase. Abraham Hicks says, you can't get it wrong and you'll never get it done.
I love that. You can't
And
get
this-
it wrong, you'll never get it
And
done.
you'll never get it done. Yeah. So don't worry about the fact that it's not done yet. You'll never get it done. And don't worry about, your belief that you're doing something wrong. You can't get it wrong. It's not possible to get it wrong. That's almost counterintuitive though, because it certainly feels like that we did something wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't get what we wanted. It must have been that we did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So our first reaction when we hear that is, well, no, I did something wrong.
Right. You can't even fathom it. Like in your brain, it's like not computing of how is it possible that I can't get it wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the wisdom behind the phrase is tremendous, because what it's really saying is there's no such thing as being wrong. To be is just to be. We are beers.
It is neither right nor wrong.
We are eternal beings. We continue forever. We may not continue forever in this particular body, but our essence continues forever and ever and ever. And as eternal beings, we are being. We be in this life. We be in the next life. We are just being. And there's nothing right or wrong about that.
No.
It's just what it is.
Yeah.
So when we look at it that way, then all of a sudden it becomes a little bit easier to accept the idea that you can't get it wrong. But it still there's that little piece, like you said, there's that little piece that we're kind of taught. There must have been something that I did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I go to the second thing that I like to go through. This was actually my share in last night's meeting. I say, if I'm trying to understand what I did wrong, what's going wrong, why isn't this working the way I want it to work? The thing I've been going to a lot lately, and I especially went to it during the last 3 months or so when I was going through what I've been going through, is to ask myself, what's the payoff? Doesn't matter whether it's working out the way I want it to or the way I don't want it to. In both cases, there's a payoff. So in the situation where I would normally be asking myself, what did I do wrong? Instead of asking myself what I do wrong, I ask myself, what's the payoff for the course that I took?
Ooh, what's the payoff for the course that I took?
Because I did make certain decisions that under certain circumstances, I might say, I was wrong to do that. But there was a payoff. There was something that I at least perceived to be a benefit to follow that course. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it. Mm-hmm. It may have been a dysfunctional benefit. It may not have been particularly healthy.
Often it is a dysfunctional benefit.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it was still a payoff.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can identify what the payoff is, it almost doesn't even matter why I did it. Just by identifying the payoff, then I think it becomes easier to say, well, okay, now I know what the payoff was. Now I know what I got out of it, even if it wasn't healthy. Is that what I continue to want?
That's
and
right.
usually if it's dysfunctional, now it becomes easy. Like, well, no, I really don't want that anymore. But now that I've identified that much, it almost doesn't even matter why I, quote, did something wrong. It's, did I like where it took me to?
Yeah.
And once I answer that one, now I find at that point it becomes very easy to pivot. Up until that point, it can be difficult to pivot because I haven't really identified what the payoff is.
Mm-hmm. Why you're doing it.
Why am I doing it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's brilliant. I like that.
Yeah, I came up with it.
Well, I agree that there is always a payoff. There's always a reason why we do things a certain way. And I truly believe, and I coach on this too, is that, there's a perception behind it that you're getting something out of it that you need, or you feel you need in some way. And it's looking at that without judgment, just with simple curiosity. Like, what is it that I got out of doing this? Like, what's driving this? What's feeding this? What am I getting out of this that I perceive that I need to be safe, to be loved, to whatever, and whatever that reason may be. And the follow-up question that I always ask is that the way that I want it to be?
Right.
Or does it have to be that way?
Yeah.
Because we get stuck in thinking that our life, the way that we see things around us, is the way that it is. And I was thinking about this last night, actually. The interesting thing is that our perception is distorted. not good or bad, just distorted based on all of the experiences that we've had. And you could be sitting right next to me, Walt, and we could be listening to the same exact speaker or song or whatever it is and have a completely different experience.
That's right.
So it means, and maybe distorted isn't the right word, but my perception is mine and yours is yours. And if that they both exist and they both are true at the exact same moment in time, which means that there's room for me to choose a new perspective with all things.
Well, to draw from the title of today's show, our perspectives are colored.
Absolutely. They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're bound to be different colors. If everybody was the same color, we wouldn't be able to tell anybody apart.
That's right. And nothing would be unique. Nothing would be special.
Right.
I mean, I think the reason why we have our own unique perspective is to bring that, song, if you will, to the world. It's a new color. There we go. Back to the colors. It's a new color that you're bringing to the world that only you can see and describe and show to the rest of the world.
Something else that came up to me yesterday when I was giving my suggestion about identifying the payoff was hearkening back to the Abraham Hicks phrase, you can't get it wrong, you'll never get it done. Another way of understanding that you can't get it wrong is, let's say you have been pursuing X and the payoff for X is that you're in a state of victimhood. And it's okay to say, I want to be in victimhood. It's okay to say, I want to be a victim. We have this tendency to want to, put a negative spin. Oh, don't be a victim. Being a victim is a really bad thing, but you can choose to be a victim if you want to.
Yeah.
Now, the real question is that what you want? Not, is it right or wrong to be a victim? Not whether you feel like you want to be there. Is that really where you want to stay? Because now when you look at it that way, now, if you choose to continue to be a victim, well, go ahead, you can. And if you choose not to be a victim, now you can climb out of it. But by looking at it in terms of, yes, I can choose to be a victim if I want to, you take all that stigma away. That moral stigma. Oh, it's wrong to be a victim. No. Okay. What if it wasn't wrong? Now what do you want to do?
Well, going back to your original question, what am I getting out of being a victim?
Yeah.
A lot of people are afraid to step out of that victim stance or forgive or let go of whatever trauma or situation put them inside that box, if you will, because who are you without it?
Good question.
And a lot of times if we don't feel like we're a victim, or if we let it go or we forgive or whatever, then we're saying that it was okay what happened, or that's the perception in the mind. So for me to be right, I have to be a victim.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, we can also take it into the other negative emotional responses too. Well, if I'm a victim, I can be angry. If I'm a victim, I can be depressed.
Yeah, I'm allowed to feel all these things.
I'm allowed to feel all those things.
Yeah, I'm allowed to be pissed off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that also raises an interesting question. Are you allowed to feel those things without being a victim?
Why not?
Oh, sure. I agree with you. I'm just saying from the perspective of the person who's evaluating whether they want to stay in that victimhood. Because it's very possible that people can be going for and kind of being drawn toward the victim psychology because that's the only place they feel like they can express those and feel those feelings. They're not allowed to outside of that victim bubble.
Whew. My dog is weighing in on this one. Did you hear her?
I heard, and very sharply, I might add.
Yeah. She is angry.
Very strong opinion.
Yeah. Oh,
is she feeling like a victim? I hope not.
She is playing the victim.
She is playing the victim. Okay.
She is playing the victim, and she's mad. She wants me to put her on a chair. And yeah, so you keep talking. I'll be right back, or else she won't stop.
Okay.
So keep playing the victim.
Well, it's actually the dog picking up on what we were talking about. The dog decided, okay, I want to be a victim here because, well, that's going to meet my need. If I continue to be the victim, then Jody Lynn's going to get up and take care of me. So I got exactly the payoff I was looking for.
That's right. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a very good dog trainer because I don't know how to get her to stop. She just barks louder. Then she gets closer to me and then she barks louder. So she gets what she wants when she wants it. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point about the payoff. That's a very strong payoff.
Mm-hmm. You get what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, in a different context, it could be like people feel bad for you, or they have more compassion towards you, or they're kinder to you, or they pay more attention to you, or,
sure.
you know, it could be the excuse that you use on why things never go right for you. Like if you let go of that, then there's no excuse for all the bad things that you've done in retaliation because of this thing.
Yeah, that's right. It actually becomes a way to justify all kinds of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so once again, we're faced with the ultimate conundrum. Is that what you want?
Yeah.
Because that may very well be what you want. And if it is, then okay, be prepared because you're going to continue to get more of it.
That's right. Yeah. And is there another way?
There's an interesting question.
Yeah. Is there another way? Is it I love using the question. Is it absolutely true? Because there's very few things that are absolute.
No, not really. But the only absolute that I know is that we exist. Beyond that, I would be reaching to find one.
Right? Every absolute that I've come up against where people say you absolutely need this thing, even water. You absolutely need water every 24 hours or whatever the number is. 2 days, I think, right? 48 hours maybe you can live without water.
Something. I'm not sure how long. I think you may be able to go longer, but yeah, I don't want to try.
Something like that. But there is a tribe somewhere. I think it's South Africa. I don't want to speculate where it is, but there is a tribe that does not drink water at all. So that is not absolute. They drink something else that is not water.
I was going to say, where do they get their moisture? They got to get moisture from somewhere.
Yeah. But it's not water. So it's not absolute.
It's true. I mean, cats generally don't like to drink from a water dish. They'll go outside and they'll lick the grass.
Oh.
That's how they get their moisture.
I didn't know that.
That and they also get it from their food. They want moisture in their food. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I've been kind of feeding into that, literally feeding into that, by adjusting what I feed to Joy because I'm realizing he needs more moisture. So I'm finding moister cat food to give to him just so that he can have the moisture.
I love that. Yeah. But when you start looking at your life in those terms, you know, like what do I want? And, you know, is there another option on getting it? Like going back to this victim conversation, do I have to be a victim to have other people be compassionate towards me?
Excellent question.
Yeah. I think the most powerful thing that we can do on this plane is ask questions. And we may not have the answer, but there's power in the question and asking it and asking ourselves, what are we thinking? Why have we put ourselves in this box? And like, how is it serving us?
And is there anything that could serve us better?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what we call the safety zone. We don't question, could it be better? It's barely good enough, so that's safe.
Yeah.
But what if it could be a whole lot better? Which, by the way, is just in and of itself a scary concept. If you're not used to being outside of that safety zone, that's a bit terrifying.
Yeah, this is the way it's always been. Well,
then we can't change it.
That'll never change. I hate that saying. This is the way it's always been. So, yeah. And before I can't remember who it is, broke the 1 minute mile or whatever it was.
Roger Bannister. Yeah.
Roger Bannister. Yes, exactly.
4 minute mile.
Before that happened, then nobody could do it. It was humanly impossible to do it until it wasn't.
And then 6 months later, about a half dozen other people had done the same thing.
Exactly. So it wasn't impossible. It
Not
was just
really.
out of our scope of what we thought was reality.
Mm.
And the more that you get into this conversation of reality, the wonkier it really becomes. Because what is reality?
Welcome to the rabbit hole.
Right, exactly. What is reality? I don't know.
That's where I go back to the Abraham Hicks teaching. I think Abraham's teachings are fabulous. So for instance, when I look at their definition of what a belief is a thought that you think over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that, I said, well, yeah, of course. Why didn't I think of that one before?
Yeah.
It was so clear. It's crystal clear when it was expressed that way, but it also implies a lot of stuff. I mean, if a belief is a thought you think over and over again, then how is that different from reality? Isn't a reality something that you think over and over again?
Absolutely it is.
Yeah. Which has another really scary prospect associated with it. What if I were to think of a different reality and actually get myself to believe it by thinking it over and over and over and over and over again?
Imagine what could change.
Yeah. Almost everything, actually.
Absolutely everything.
So going back to our original topic, when we're looking at the colors of whatever our colors are for a holiday season, the question that we're bringing into our attention right now is, do those colors have to stay the same?
No.
You just instantly said, no, they don't. No.
No. Do they have to stay the same? No. Can they stay the same? Sure.
Yes.
Will they stay the same? I don't know.
That depends on you, really.
It depends on you. I think it's fascinating that we become adults and then we think that nothing can change.
Isn't that interesting? Yes.
Yeah, that we can't change our mind. Oh no, you got to stay in that crappy job that you hate. Why? Why? Why do I have to stay in a reality that I don't like?
It reminds me of a truism that went around back in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, which was a woman can always change her mind. And the implication behind it was a man couldn't. I thought to myself, well, why are we left out?
Yeah. Yeah. I think anybody can change their mind and change it again and again and again until they decide on something better. Like, isn't that what the point of life is? Is to keep choosing?
Yeah.
Like, how often is it that our society is stuck in choosing something that they no longer want to choose, but they don't know how to choose something different, or they don't know how to empower themselves to choose something different? Mm-hmm. That's a hard one.
Well, that's basically the question of, what do I want my life to look like? Mm-hmm. Am I willing to just stay with the status quo and just repeating the same thing over and over again? Or do I want to live life by trying something new? Mm-hmm. Trying something I've never done before.
Yeah. And break all the rules and make my own.
Break the rules. Oh, no.
Like they even existed.
Yeah, right. You're like, who did make those rules anyway?
Who says? I love that question. Who says? Because a lot of times it's like, I don't know, people.
Well, it's they. It's always they that said. Yeah.
Yeah. They say. Who's they? I don't know.
They do a lot of hiding in the shadows, I've noticed. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't ever come out. Mm-hmm. It's like they're ashamed of themselves or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really think it's our own perception, our own mind, our thoughts, our beliefs, all of that stuff that imprisons us to this reality. Mm-hmm. And I've had multiple experiences within my life where I have proven that to be true. A really easy example of this is money. You know, somebody could be feeling really anxious. I don't have enough money. I've been there. Absolutely. Okay, I don't have enough money. Then all of a sudden, I work on commission in my brokerage business. All of a sudden, big check pops in. And I see it on the screen that shows what I'm getting paid. All the anxiety melts. I am happy. I am joyous. I am blissful. What changed? The money's not in my bank account. Not yet. Because we always get like the notification or whatever the day before or whatever a week before,
So
whatever.
you still have to wait
is.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're still waiting. Nothing has changed, but my whole reality has changed in this instant. If that is true, then I could have changed that reality through a different modicum. Like it didn't have to be that check. I have the power of shifting that response, not money, but I'm giving it away to money.
Interesting you should mention this. I mentioned that meetup that I was in last night, and one of the participants raised a very interesting question. And I'm not sure if I can faithfully reproduce the question, but I'll come as close as I can. The essence of it was she wanted to know why it was that she seemed to be spending money faster than she realized it would go. That's my way of saying it, not the way she said it, but that's kind of what the gist of it was. And the leader of the group said, well, do you make a lot of money? Is money coming in too? And she said, yes, money. She does very well. She has a good career. So the money's always coming in, but she's just perplexed at how fast the money goes out. Now the leader had her own approach to how she would answer that, but I'm curious to know how you answer that because you're a money coach. You help people with money. I imagine you probably encountered that one before. How do you address that one?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's more than 30-minute conversation because I think there's some unpacking there. Because I think the root of it comes back to the belief system, the expectation. If you believe that money is going quickly, then it will. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't give very much direction to their money or pay attention to it. Even the people that budget. I know many students that have gone through my course, and one of the pieces of the course is to take a look at the last 3 months that just passed and what you spent your money on. For me, when I did this, I was shocked because I was a budgeter. Mm-hmm. I know where my money went. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I had some idea, but there was all of these little things that I wasn't expecting, like $500 a month on like McDonald's or like fast food joints like that. I didn't think I did that. That wasn't in my awareness that I was spending my money on that. And that money was coming in, but I wasn't giving it any sort of attention or direction.
Yeah.
And money wants to flow. So I would start with that person asking, is that absolutely true? That you never have any money, that it just goes? And then bring the awareness to the scenario, to your bank account. Bring your awareness forward to it. Okay. Do you have $0 in your account right now? No. So it's not all gone. And what is fast? And I would start breaking down each of those things. So what is fast? Like it lasts 2 weeks, it lasts a month, it lasts whatever. Is that absolutely true? Is it always that way? And then when you bring your awareness to it, you'll start to see that it's your belief that it goes so fast that is actually making it go even faster. So then we can start bringing awareness to it and seeing that that's not an absolute. It's not always true. And you can start bringing awareness to other things. Well, where is that money going? Do you want it to go to those areas? What about it makes you uncomfortable that it's going out fast or it's going out at this pace? That's where I'd kind of start.
I like that. And I especially like the example of going to McDonald's. I mean, I don't go to McDonald's. I'm not interested in fast food. But if I was somebody who did that, that would be one of those areas. I think this is the way you meant it. It's one of those areas where we're spending money without realizing we're spending money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, Walt, that, sorry to cut you off. The thing is that I would have said I never went to fast food joints either. And it wasn't McDonald's. It was Tim Hortons. That was like, it's the Canadian thing, right? It was Tim Hortons. And so when I actually looked at this for myself, I was like, whoa, I would have bet you $1 million that I never spent that much money on fast food. But instead of looking at it through a lens of judgment, I looked at it as a lens of curiosity. Why? I don't even really like Tim Hortons. I don't like McDonald's. I don't like A&W. Like, it's not like, ooh, luxurious food. Like, I mean, okay, there's one thing at that time that I absolutely loved at Tim Hortons. Okay. What about the other $490? Like, it was like a $10 meal or something like that. Yeah. Like, what? I mean, did I really go every single day of the week? No, maybe. But I started to look at all of these things, and it was so interesting because I had zero conscious awareness that I was even using my dollars towards these things. And then I saw it and was like, okay, what's the pattern behind it? Like, what is this doing for me? Because we do everything for a reason, going back to where we started today. So what is this doing for me? Like, why do I end up going there? When do I go there? I seem to go there at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 3. Okay, interesting. That's like after lunchtime or whatever. So I started to map back my day of what was happening. And I was completely unconscious of it, but I would wake up in the morning and I would be a ball of anxiety. I need to get to the office now. Like, I'm behind. Everything was around this belief system of there isn't enough, including time or money or love or anything. It played in all areas of my life. But I don't have enough time. I am running out of time. I'm running out of money. I am behind the ball. That was my first thought when I woke up in the morning.
That's a heck of a way to start the day. Oof.
Right? Okay. So then I would rush through the things that I should be doing. I used to have a really strict routine in the morning. I would wake up and I would read 10 pages of a good book. I would journal. I would read my goals, and then I would get ready for my day. And I would have coffee and like do my hair and all of that stuff in there too. But I was always trying to like check off these boxes, and I had to be perfectly on time. And I never really took appointments in the mornings. So it wasn't that I had to rush to be at the office for an appointment. I could see that in my calendar that there wasn't appointments until 10, 11, later in the day. So what was I rushing to get there for? Was one of my questions. Well, I have to be there. Why? Why do I have to be there at 9 a.m. or 8:30 or whatever the time was? Because that's when they say I should be there.
There's that dreaded they again.
They, right? So I'm killing myself to get there at a certain time. Okay, and what happens? Why am I eating out? Going right back to this question. Why am I eating these garbage foods? Okay, why am I spending this money on things that I don't even really like, that I didn't even really know I was spending? You know, it's just a tap of a button, right? I would be in such a rush to get ready that I wouldn't make anything for lunch.
Oh, okay.
And then I'd be too rushed to go and get something before I actually went to the office because I had to be there on time.
Yeah.
So then I would rush to get to the office without any food, and I wouldn't eat any food before that point. So then I would wait until all of my appointments were done, or I had been in my day. I had done all of these things. I felt like I had accomplished things. And I would wait till the point of starvation, which would probably be around 2 o'clock. And that's when I would go to McDonald's, Tim Hortons, A&W, one of those places. It was out of sheer starvation. I would wait till the last moment where I was hangry and I couldn't help but go and get something that was fast. Even though I didn't really want it, I needed something to survive in that moment. That's where my body was at.
So you were setting yourself up for binging.
I was setting myself up for failure on all fronts. To binge, to feed my body stuff that I didn't really want to eat, that probably isn't that great for it, to spend money I didn't want to spend, all for what? Because of a belief system that I had to be at the office at a certain time. And I also had to be doing all of these other things before I got there.
I love that story. And it also cues a story in my mind, which is that, as I've mentioned before on the program, when I started the podcast, I started it largely because my business had first of all, been flatlined by the 2008 financial crisis, and then I had not successfully been able to climb out of it since then. So all of our savings had gone. We were deep in debt. Louise had the same kind of situation with her business, so we were just floundering really badly. And as a result, like I said, we were deep in debt. And from that point on, it was, how do you pay down this debt? Because there was a piece of me that just refused to even consider the idea of bankruptcy, like a pride thing. So I said, well, then the only thing I can do is I've got to find a way to pay it down. And then incrementally, in very small amounts, it was paying down year after year. It was like getting, hardly moving at all. And then the last 3 or 4 years, I was getting pretty good traction. And then came the pandemic. And in the pandemic, like everybody else, my income shrunk. But an amazing thing happened. I paid off the debt. And I said, how did I do that? Where'd the money come from? So I actually had to sit down and calculate it out. And part of it came from an inheritance. My mom passed, and so a significant portion came from that. But I added it all up, and I realized there was 20% missing. I said, where did that 20% come from? I mean, our income was reduced, and yet somehow this 20% appeared out of thin air that I can't even identify it.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a while, but I'm a record keeper. I use Quicken to keep my records. And so I went through Quicken, and I'm looking and looking. The reports aren't showing me anything. I'm like, what the heck is going on here? And then it finally dawned on me, kind of alluding to what you talked about. During the pandemic, we were in lockdown. We couldn't go anywhere. So we couldn't go spend money ridiculously. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of forced into budgeting in a way that I hadn't budgeted before. Just not spending money on stuff that basically was designed just to try to make myself feel better, because I wasn't focusing on actually feeling better. I wanted the money to make me feel better.
That's right.
But in the pandemic, I couldn't do that. And so miraculously, 20% appeared. Well, it wasn't 20% of income. It was 20% less expenditure.
That's right. Yeah.
And where do you find 20% less expenditure in the books? Well, you don't. The only thing you record in the books is what you actually spend money on. Yeah. The money you don't spend money on doesn't show up there. That's why it's so hard to find it.
Absolutely. And most of us are unaware of what that 20% is, or what our money goes to at all. The best example of this is when you pay off something big, like that has a monthly reoccurrence, like a car. I tell all of my brokerage clients, and definitely all of my coaching clients, if you have something that is coming up, like to be done paying or whatever, set the intention of what you want that money to go to now, because it will go somewhere.
Very good
point. Will go somewhere, and you will have no idea. But in a year from now, like I just finished off paying my car in
Congratulations.
June. Thank you. In June. And that $570 a month, not putting it towards something would mean, in 6 months or a year from now, where's that money? Where's that extra $570 a month? It's just poof, gone to other things. Money loves direction.
It does. Mm-hmm. And I love that when I can direct where I want the money to go consciously, I get great results. Like an example being that pay down period when I was paying off all that debt. I became very aware, because I dug into the details to figure out, where do I need to budget? What do I need to do different? All that kind of thing. And I realized just how much money I was paying just to service all that debt. Yeah. It absolutely drove me nuts. Thousands of dollars a year going out the window to pay interest on a debt. Like, oh no, this is insane.
Yeah.
But when I stopped focusing on that so much and started focusing my attention on what I wanted instead, but also, like I said, running into the pandemic and realizing that I was no longer spending money just to satisfy a negative emotional urge, then it took on an entirely different meaning. Mm-hmm. Now this whole idea, and by the way, I stopped servicing the debt because the debt got paid off, which was a wonderful little benefit on top of everything else.
Yeah.
But the benefit only came because, partly through circumstances, I ended up changing my pattern, my expenditure pattern.
Yeah.
And that is what enabled me to get to the point where suddenly I didn't have to service debt anymore. Like, oh my God.
Yeah. Well, and those patterns, there's so much more than just the tapping of the card or going to the place and spending the money. And that's where most people focus with money when they're trying to repattern their money relationship, is like, okay, I'm going to stop going to McDonald's or Tim Hortons or whatever, like whatever your vice is. I'm going to stop doing that. And I'm going to like grit my teeth and bear it. And I'm not going to do it. Well, the story that I just told you, that wouldn't have worked. Right. I couldn't stop because that wasn't the beginning of the pattern.
That's right.
That was just the end of the pattern. That was a symptom of a bigger issue that was going on. This issue of me feeling anxious when I woke up in the morning, that was driving every action step that I took throughout my day. Everything was in fear and anxiety. That needed to change. And when I could change that, I could breathe. I could make my own lunch. Yeah. I could show up at whatever time I wanted to or needed to based on my client roster that day. And I didn't have to go out anymore because I built myself up this, the pattern that I actually needed. I went to the root of the pattern rather than sticking on the surface. It's never about money. Ever.
That's an excellent. It's an excellent illustration for kind of what I was talking about too, in that you identified what the root negative emotion was that was driving you to go spend money on the fast food.
Yeah.
Because that's always what the case is. Whenever we're spending that 20%, we're spending it because we're trying to mask a pain or, overcome a feeling of want or lack or something that is wanting in our lives. And what was wanting in your life was, well, there wasn't enough time. There wasn't enough food. There wasn't enough hours in the day. There wasn't enough. It had nothing actually to do with the fast food.
No.
It just had to do with your built-in belief that you had acquired over time that, there just isn't enough. There isn't enough.
Yeah.
And then you found it. Then you realized it.
Yeah. Then I could change it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to what we talked about before when we talked about how if we understand what the payoff is, because you've figured out what the payoff was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and there was a bigger question of what was the payoff of feeling behind?
Yeah.
Because there was obviously something that was driving that belief system that drove those emotions for me to feel anxious all the time. And it was really difficult for me not really difficult for me to repattern, but what it was connected to was I needed that pressure to perform. If I didn't have that pressure, then I would be lazy and I would eventually stop working and then I'd have no money and then I'd end up homeless and I would die. That was the root of it.
That's one heck of a, that's one heck of a mindset.
Right? Okay. Oof. All right. Well, now I can see it, or I could see it at that time and go, oh, so I believe that if I let these feelings go, if I let myself off the hook, eventually I'll end up homeless, alone, and then dead. No wonder I'm doing it. Like, no wonder I keep playing this same pattern over and over and over again. It's because I don't want to die. I don't want to end up alone. I don't want to end up homeless, lazy, homeless, all of those things. They were all wrapped together. But then I could start asking, is that really true?
Yeah, and that's the powerful question right there. I know it's one of your favorite ones to ask.
Mm-hmm. Is it really true? If I let myself off the hook, if I didn't operate from a place of anxiety, would I be lazy? Maybe. I didn't have an answer for that.
Great point. You don't necessarily have to have an answer. You just have to identify what is that payoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But what it brought me to was a huge aha moment for myself when I operate like in the zone, in my zone of genius, a lot of people will call it or whatever, right? I call it when I'm tapped in. Mm-hmm. When I'm tapped in and I'm working on all cylinders, so I feel refreshed and I'm engaged and I'm ready to rock. I can get things done 10 times faster than most people I can do more in 2 hours than most people can do in 2 weeks because I'm tapped in. And the opposite is also true. When I'm not and I am struggling and forcing myself to do something, it's going to take me 10 times longer.
And doesn't it seem like the day also drags 10 times longer?
100%. Yeah. It takes 10 times longer. It takes 10 times more energy. It's 10 times more frustrating. All of these things. And when I could see those two sides of things, I could look at them from a place of conscious awareness. Like, okay, so the same task over here, when I'm forcing it, takes me 10 hours. And over here, when I'm not forcing it, takes me 1 hour. What do I want to choose? I want to choose the one that takes me less time so I can do other things. That sounds way more enjoyable than the opposite.
This is why I could never have a cuckoo clock.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because when I'm in that not so good mind space where I'm thinking, oh God, this is going to take forever. I got the clock in the background going tick, tick.
Yes.
Tick,
Yeah.
tick.
Yes. Well, and going back to reality, time itself is a construct that we've created. And we've both had experiences where time flies. This episode, being here with you every Wednesday is an example of that. Just boom, feels like 10 minutes. And then, an hour has gone by. And I've had experiences with other individuals where it felt like the hour was like painfully 7 hours. We slow or speed time based on how we're feeling about things in this moment too. So time is also something that's up for debate.
This is a question that I've thought about before. I actually asked it on the podcast a number of times about 4 or 5 years ago. I haven't asked it since then, but I'll ask it of you now. Since time tends to fly, like you say, when you're feeling good, and it tends to drag when you're feeling down or feeling bad, the question that comes to my mind is, well, is there a way to feel good and have time feel like it's going slowly? Because then we can really just, stretch it out like, yeah, let's just suck the steam dry of all this wonderful juiciness that it has.
Perhaps. I would say, why not? I mean, you can think about, when you first started meditating, that 10 minutes felt like an hour. Even when you were enjoying it, it still felt like it was forever.
Well, maybe it was 10 minutes for you. For me, it took about 60 seconds before it felt like forever. But I get your point.
Yes. Oh, man. Have you ever been in a float tank before?
I have not, no.
Those are so much fun. They suspend the reality around you. Like everything, like there's no sound, there's no light, and you're floating in a saltwater bath essentially. And the first 10 minutes, feels like super hard because you can't see anything, you can't hear anything, and you're like, I don't know, like this is just so weird. Even when you open your eyes, it's pitch black. But what I found in that tank was once I was able to like calm myself down and just be in that moment, it felt like 6 hours had gone by.
Wow.
Also at the same time, 3 minutes. It was the weirdest feeling ever. And it was only an hour-long session.
I'm glad that you described it the way you described it, because I remember the first time I heard about that concept, it was described to me as a sensory deprivation tank.
Yes.
And when I heard it described that way, I had absolutely no interest in being involved with it at all. I didn't want to be deprived of senses.
Yes. Oh, it's almost like enriching the senses instead of depriving them. Because everything starts to turn on and you feel everything. And then when you start to see things, because the light eventually comes on to show you your way out, especially for people like me who, you start to rub your eyes and you get salt water in your eyes and you're like, I'm blind. Where's the door? I honestly thought that I had spun, all 180, like had done a full spin and my head was in the opposite direction than when it started, which is impossible. Like this thing is, just wider than my body.
Oh, okay.
Like, so you could not spin that way. Like you could sit up and turn around, sure.
Right.
but I didn't do that. I felt
Yeah.
like I had spun the opposite way. So I'm like looking on the wall for the exit point. I'm like, oh God, I'm stuck. But when I finally got out, everything was brighter. Like I could hear things differently. It was so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially when you said I could hear things better, brighter. It reminds me, this is going to sound strange, but it's kind of related. It reminds me of a time a couple of years ago where I got my ears cleaned because they had gotten full of wax.
Yeah.
And they cleared them out, and the sound deprivation I'd been experiencing because of that blockage was pretty severe. So when the doctor cleared it out, he said, now you should hear something different. I said, yeah. I said, oh, yeah, I really do. Oh, my goodness, that's loud. It was one of those experiences. And from that moment on, from the moment I left the doctor's office and went home, everything was really loud for like the next 48 hours. Yeah. So, I would go into the kitchen to do dishes. And when I did that, I'm unloading a dishwasher and putting dishes, putting the crockery into the cabinet, and the crockery like really, really, really loud. The glasses in the cabinet. Shh, oh my goodness gracious.
And you're like, ah. Ah, that's funny.
Alex Standy's comment was, well, now you know what it's like to have autism.
Yeah, no
that's
kidding.
what the person on the autistic spectrum experiences. Everything is enhanced. All senses are enhanced. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, very interesting.
Well, let's see. Do we have any last comments about holiday colors that we want to bring in before we wind up?
I think we should just touch on attachment, because I think that if you had a blue Christmas or a Christmas that wasn't the color that you perceive it should have been, or that your friends had or your family had or whatever, we tend to create meaning around that too, of like, oh, I'm bad, or I shouldn't have experienced that, or something's wrong with me, going right back to where we started. And having some compassion for yourself, that's okay. It was just a season, a moment in time. And it doesn't mean that even looking back on it, you can't change the color, or the color can't change, if you will. You choose another perspective, and I think the color will change, but it doesn't have to be bad. It's okay, whatever color it was this season. And if you choose, you can look back and choose to see a different one looking back.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's very important. It harkens back to the Abraham phrase, you can't get it wrong. It's not possible to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Which is basically a way of giving ourselves permission to say, there's no wrong attached.
No.
The only wrong that we ever attach is the one that we attached. It wasn't automatically there. It wasn't part of it. So let go of that part. And suddenly that blue Christmas starts to feel a little different, because now I'm not judging it anymore.
Exactly.
I'm discerning it. I'm recognizing it, but I'm not judging it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It turns out that's a pretty powerful difference.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One is empowering you, and one is disempowering you.
That's right. It's that clean. It's that clear.
Yeah. Absolutely.
As has been this conversation.
Yeah. Always. Our 5-minute session.
Yeah, the 5-minute session that takes an hour. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Great. I love it.
Although I have to say, it has gotten to the point now for me. I'm talking about earlier about, how can we extend the time of the stuff that feels good? It's gotten to the point now where it feels like an hour, and I'm glad that it does.
Yeah.
Because every time I get the daily dose of happy, everybody else gets it too. And I got to experience it for a full hour. Now, my goal right now is to make it feel like it's 5 hours of joy. If I can get to that point, then I feel like I've hit nirvana at that point.
Yes, absolutely. Done. I love it.
Well, thank you very much, Jody Lynn. And
Thank you, Walt.
I hope you have a happy new year. I know I'll be talking to you in the new year. But in the meantime, happy new year to you and your family.
Yeah, to you also.
And happy new year to all of our listeners and friends everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.